So there were 7 updates in total. Let's go through them all right now. First, and least important to me, some of their cinema lenses now communicate metadata to the camera. I feel like every time Canon updates the C70's firmware, they throw in a few extra like Canon existing lens compatibility updates. But now when you do choose to rent or buy these lenses, the camera will be able to tell you your focal length and your t-stop and all of that stuff on the LCD screen, just like with RF and compatible EF lenses. Next up, they improved the clear scan function. So this is a shutter option. Instead of shutter angle or shutter speed, you can choose the clear scan mode when you want to very surgically eliminate flicker from a scene. This feature was already in the camera, but it's much more precise now. I've never had the pleasure of shooting on a volume, but if you'd like to take your C70 onto one, you'll probably have a much easier time now with this new firmware update. I'm gonna take a quick time out here before tackling the rest of the updates to let you all know that I am launching a full C70 user guide course. This is the reason I have not uploaded anything to YouTube in close to 3 months, because I've really just put my head down on that all-encompassing project. So if you're enjoying this video, then you might enjoy me talking at you for roughly 4 hours about everything C70. To be honest, I actually learned a ton while making this course because there are so many fun features hidden in the menu that you might not just happen upon. I also cover more high-level stuff like how I expose different skin tones and how I choose my autofocus settings for specific purposes, and all that stuff, of course, is gonna be in this user guide. It is linked in the description. All right, so now let's get back to the other firmware updates. Number 4, I have been asking for since day 1. You can now enlarge the waveform. You were always able to move it from left to right and cycle through different types of waveform, but it was never big enough, and now you can simply tap the LCD screen to enlarge it, and tap it again to shrink back down. Number 4 is essentially the same thing, but for the vector scope. However, instead of it enlarging, it doubles the gain, so it's easier to see in what direction your saturation is pointing. Number 5, you can now change the transparency of the waveform in vector scope. I have it linked to my OSD displays, which is the big menus that you're looking at right now, but you could take it all the way down to like 20% to have it be very transparent, or make it completely opaque, whatever you prefer. Number 6, the autofocus improved again. It's almost hard to believe like where the autofocus started on this camera, because it's just been like linearly improving in quality over time. When I first got the camera, you had to touch multiple physical buttons to track something. We later got tap to track, then we got eye tracking, and now with this new firmware update, we can both track the back of people's heads and have an easier time tracking them when they're sideways or wearing a helmet. You can enable the back of head detection in the menu here. For the test I'm about to show you, I had the camera set to face only, not face priority, so this could test just how effective it was at recognizing my head as a head. And it works. The old version would sometimes track the back of my head if it had previously seen my face, but now with the new firmware, it will track your head even if it doesn't know that it's attached to a face yet. And your focus box will change size and shape as your subject moves. And you can more clearly now tell like what the camera is focusing on. You can tell here if I click on my 70-200 lens, it sees the focus ring as the object, not the whole lens. And you can tell that it's thinking that way, or calculating that way. It's not quite sentient yet, but it's calculating its autofocus based off of that rubber grip. And you can tell that's what it's doing because the focus box is really narrowing in on just that ring. And lastly, my favorite, now when you have multiple subjects in frame, you can either use the control dial on the lens or one of the back dials on the camera to select which subject you want to focus on. So in the past, whenever you had multiple subjects, the camera would just naturally focus on whoever the most prominent person in frame was. And if you wanted to focus on Dick instead of Bill, you would just tap the LCD screen and then it would rack to that person's face. And I thought that was pretty seamless. But now if in the wrench icon, we go to the function, where is it? The rear control dial, and change this to select subject. Now, when I rotate that dial, I switch subjects from left to right, and I can go the other direction. I can find the exact person I want to focus on without tapping the LCD screen. And it gets even better when you enable eye tracking, which I turned off to start. But if I enable eye tracking, we can now select the eye of the person that we want in focus. Even for little George Bush over there, even though his face is that small in frame, it's still selecting both of those eyes. And I think something like this would be invaluable for people like wedding videographers, so you can make sure when shooting a crowded group shot that it is your bride's eye that is in focus and not one of the bridesmaids. This is a feature I did not know I needed, but I am so glad to have now. Exciting times. My full trailer to my course is probably coming to my channel in the next week or so, but if you want to be one of the first people to access it, it is currently available for purchase below in the description.